Layron with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. They're going to be taking a look at some of the general use cases for Fantasy Grounds. A lot of people are new to the hobby or new to the platform itself, or VTTs for that matter. So kind of wanted to touch on some of the initial things that you may want to consider when you are thinking about buying the app or getting into it. One of the first things I recommend that you do is to use the tutorial 5e campaign. So even if you don't like Dungeons and Dragons, at least you can kind of get a feel for how the platform runs and what it looks like. So if I click on the tutorial 5e campaign under load campaign, this is after you install, of course, and you do need to make an online account on the Fantasy Grounds website initially. But once you download it and set it up in the settings, you can access the tutorial campaign. And then I'm going to go ahead and start it and just kind of go through just a few of the things. I'm not going to go through the entire campaign. I might do that in a different video. I've done other videos that are related, but I just kind of want to show you where to look. And also there's an online portion of this where you can read online too, like if you have two screens, or you can also read inside of Fantasy Grounds itself. So it kind of depends on what your level of comfort is, how much content you have. Maybe you don't have any content. So that's why I'm showing this first, because not everybody has all the rule books and all the different things to access. So this might hopefully help you decide if you want to invest in the platform more or if you want to kind of get started. So this is the test campaign. I've already used this once or twice to kind of show how things work, but if you come over down here on the bottom, over here on the right where it says campaigns, you go to the story entries, or excuse me, the world entry, and you come down to story. This basically takes you on a guided tour of Fantasy Grounds. So if you click on start here, you just start reading the content that's available and going through the different windows, and it kind of tells you, like, you know, what explains what some of the stuff is over here on the right hand side. And then you hit the arrow, it'll take you to some examples of how the story records work and the different types of formatting. And then you start getting into just how things look in the interface. And it talks about all the different data types and shortcuts. So if you want to create your own content, it gets into that. So the story entries over here on the right-hand side are kind of a way to get started. And then there's some additional tips that you can follow. So just go down this list of the different chapters, and this will talk to you about, you know, like the sample combat encounter. And you can use this book format too, so you don't have to go through the story entries. So to access this book campaign, you just come up here to books, and you can go in here and look at the tutorial if you want. But this is basically the kind of like the view that you would get from a rule book. So if you were to buy a rule book, this is kind of the format and layout you can get, as opposed to all the modular views. So this kind of ties everything together. But this goes into an introduction. It goes into, you know, like how to load the modules, some of the basic actions that you can do. And then you have the arrow keys here at the bottom that kind of takes you through the sample characters that are already included. And then you've got copies of them, so you can kind of have an overview of what the players have and what they're made up of. And it talks about leveling up and character creation and how to build a character. You're going to be limited because you may not have any content yet, or you may just have like one book or something like that, but that will grow over time. This is kind of a really good way to kind of look at what some of the things are at the base level of Fantasy Grounds. We're not even going into, you know, adding sound and extensions and all that other stuff. This is the real basics. And I think this is the part that most people kind of skip over. They kind of go straight to the character creation, or they go straight to trying to add audio or maps and all that. So it's important to kind of learn your way around, click on things, get to know where things are stored, what they mean, and how the rule set actually interfaces with Fantasy Grounds. They're all slightly different. They're all based, or most of them are based on the core rule set, which is kind of like the foundation, the interface, you know, that sort of thing. But then they deviate as you change rule sets. So they will look a little different. Some of these things over here on the right might have a different title, or it might have a different section than another rule set. It just depends on how the rule set is designed and what it's made up of. But generally speaking, this tutorial is like a 5e kind of campaign sample, and it's just kind of designed to help you learn the interface. That's really what this is. And it kind of goes through like, like how to run portions of the game. It goes through different stages of Fantasy Grounds and how the different things work and the different activities that you can do. This even goes into a little bit of combat and rolling dice and taking you through some steps that you might want to try as you're learning the interface. So I would recommend going through that for the free 5e campaign, the free tutorial campaign. So I'm going to right click, go to exit session, and I'm going to return to launcher. So that was in load campaign under the tutorial 5e campaign. So even if you don't have any books and you just set up your account for the first time, you can use that to kind of look through and see if it's for you or if you want to dig into it deeper. So I have another campaign. This is a maps demo tutorial. I'm going to load this up because I think some of this stuff is one of the initial stumbling blocks that people run across when they first start using Fantasy Grounds, or if you haven't used it in years and you're just coming back after 10 years or whatever. A lot of us had started with Fantasy Grounds Classic, and there are some subtle and some bigger changes between the two. Fantasy Grounds Classic is no longer supported, but if you still have it installed, you can still use it, but you won't be able to update it and that sort of thing. So you kind of have a limitation there. But if you have content and you still have the old Fantasy Grounds Classic on your machine, it should still work technically. You're just not going to be able to interface with the server and download any updates or anything. So anyhow, this is just kind of a campaign that I use for demonstrating stuff within Fantasy Grounds. This is the same rule set as the test campaign, but I actually have a lot more content loaded, more official content, and not just the SRD or the basic rules. And then I also have made some images here that I imported into Fantasy Grounds, which is one of the things you can do. But I recommend that you have like a starting adventure, maybe Lost Mine of Fandelver, or if or maybe the first adventure path and Pathfinder, or just the starter books in any rule set. But essentially, this is just an image that I generated with an AI tool. So this is a log cabin, and then we have this grizzly bear, and the encounter essentially is like this map type thing that I put together, and I added the line of sight and I added all the different little effects and such. So these are just like tokens that were dragged from the combat tracker over to the map. So the combat tracker is one of the main features of Fantasy Grounds that I really like, because it keeps track of a lot of different things. For instance, you can do your initiative. So right now it's the Halfling Rogue's turn. If I click the down arrow, which is next actor, that's going to take it to the brown bear's turn. So we're going to say the brown bear is going to attack this round. So he has a multi-attack, so he gets one bite attack and one claw attack. Or I would also authorize 2 claw attacks, just as long as he doesn't get more than 3. So he's going to do a claw attack, and he's going to attack this dwarven fighter. So if I drag and drop this ATK +5, which is the attack roll on the combat tracker, and then if I want to see his actual stat block, I can double click on his token, and that will bring up the stat block, or I can double click on this data link here on the right, and that will also bring it up. So this is just a way to access the content if you're going to be using this particular NPC, so you can look at the particulars. So this is just a kind of just preliminary to kind of show you how this stuff operates. So I'm just going to leave that up, and I'll take the map and kind of clean this up a little. If you're running out of room, you can collapse the menu here on the right for a while until you need it again. So I went ahead and clicked on this arrow down here, and that actually shrinks this menu over here, so I have a little bit more room. And then what I'm going to be doing is taking the attack roll, drag and drop it either on the token on the map, or I can take this attack roll and drag it on any of these combat tracker entries that are close to me. So this bottom one is Braylum Rockfist, the fighter. You know, he's right next to him, so he's in range. So I can take this claw attack and just drag and drop it down here on top of the dwarf. So as I do so, the dice rolls and he missed. So apparently the bear came out and he like swung his arm out, but the dwarf kind of raised a shield and ducked under it, and it just kind of glided over the top of him. So basically he just whiffed. He hit nothing but air in that case. And now he gets a bite attack. So he's going to come snarling in with a bite. So I will take the attack roll, and this time, instead of dragging it to the combat tracker entry, I'm going to drag it to the actual token. So the bite attack is up here, and I'm just going to click on this text that says ATK +5, that's attack +5, and drag that on top of the dwarf. And it's rolling now, and again, he rolled a 2, so he's rolling very poorly. So looks like Braylum is safe for the time being. The brown bear has basically whiffed on both attacks, so he's very lucky. So now I'm going to pass it down to the next actor. So this is a Dwarven Cleric. Previously, when I used this particular combat encounter, she had cast a Bless spell. So she has the Bless spell active, and she has it also active on some of these other players in the combat tracker. So that's a nice thing, is that it will keep track of concentration, and it will apply the effect to the players. And so long as she's able to save, if she receives damage, like if the bear strikes at her and hurts her, then she'll be able to roll. It'll roll automatically to see if she maintains the Bless spell. So that's another feature that's kind of cool. So anything that takes concentration that goes in the combat tracker here, it's going to keep track of that, and it will roll automatically if you want it to make a save versus the damage being taken. So she has to make a Constitution save in this case. So I'm going to actually move her token over to closer to the action. So normally I wouldn't do this, but I want to illustrate how the concentration works. So she's allowed to move 25 feet according to her character sheet. It's right here, just the speed. Now, Fantasy Grounds won't limit how many squares you move. You just kind of have to go by, how far you're moving. And if you want to keep track of that as a game master, you hold down the Alt key and you can start dragging. And you don't have to hold it down the whole time. So she's going to be moving closer to the action. So that's her turn. So she's now in melee range. So I'm going to move her over, and I'm going to have her attack with one of her melee weapons. So I have her character sheet up here. As you can see, I got it queued up right next to the combat tracker and between the map. I'm going to go to the actions tab, and these are all her different actions. So she's got a crossbow and a warhammer. She's using her shield, so she can only use the warhammer one-handed, but if she wanted to, she could switch hands, but then you have to remove the shield bonus. So in this case, I'm just going to have her try to whack this grizzly with the warhammer. So I'm going to drag and drop the attack roll on the actual character sheet. So this would be where the players would interface with the character sheet. So I'm going to left-click and drag and drop it on either the map, or you can also drag it in the combat tracker. So some encounters may require that you have no map, or you might have a map, and if you don't have a map, then you can do everything out of the combat tracker. So if you use Theater of the Mind or any of those other types of play styles, this will support that. But I'm going to go ahead and drop it on the map. So she takes a nice little swing at it, and she rolls and just barely makes it. So she clips him with the hammer, maybe hits it on the leg or something like that. So it howls in pain as I drag and drop this onto, and he took heavy damage. So she thumped him pretty hard, like damn near cracked his bone, probably hurt his leg or his shoulder. So that was a pretty good lucky strike there for her. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn now. She's done. She's done her movement. I don't think she has any bonus actions that she can do right now. She's already got a concentration effect. She could cast Spiritual Weapon, but I think I'll save that for another time in case she needs it. I want to save the actual save the actions and save the spell slots. So she's already done the bless spell once. I believe that's a first level spell, so I need to check that off on her spell slots. I forgot to do that. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn to the next actor. Okay, so it's our buddy Braylum here. So I'm going to click on the right-hand side, and I moved all these sheets here so that they stacked nicely up against the center here, so that you're not having it cover everything at once. So sometimes when you first start, you'll be fighting all the windows, and just know that they always open in the center. And once you move them and place them and resize them, they'll stay there. They're not going to move after that. So you can rest assured that once you have everything laid out, you're not going to be fighting the interface as much. So I'm going to go to his actions tab, which is where most of the magic happens. And what I'm going to do is, he knows that the bear is dangerous. Okay, I'm going to have him use his action surge, which essentially gives him another attack. So first I'll see what happens. So he takes his, does he have a shield on? No. So he takes his great sword, which is a two-handed weapon, and he just takes it and he just runs up to it, or he kind of like pushes into it and just like swings as hard as he can. So we'll see if this actually works or not. So I'm going to drag and drop the attack roll onto the combat tracker entry this time. And that's a nice swing, and he did barely hit. That hit with an 11. And now I can drag and drop the damage, which is this 2d6 plus 3 slashing. And that basically took him out. So he just impales this grizzly bear. The grizzly falls in agony, and he basically lets out one last bellow. It's just basically hurt, and he just collapses to the floor. There's like a pool of blood. And at the end of this combat, I'll go ahead and advance the turn up to the top of the round to see if any of the players want to do anything else. So this individual here is like a warlock. He's basically saying, no, I'm good. I'm holding for now. Now I'll go down to the halfling, who did a sneak attack before, but missed. He has the bear targeted, so I'm going to untarget him. So I'm going to hold down the right control key and then click on the bear, and that gets rid of the targeting because he doesn't need to target the dead bear anymore. And I think he's going to start looking around for loot. So I'll go ahead and just state that since the combat settled down, the rogue here, a typical rogue thing, he's going to start looking around. So he's going to come back over here into the cabin and start looking around, looking for loot and such. So he's kind of going through drawers and kind of looking into stuff and flipping up the cushions and that sort of thing. So the next is the bear. So the bear's dead. We're not going to resurrect it or anything like that. We're not going to revive it. So you can delete it off the tracker. So there's a delete item, and you click it once, and then you click the confirm, and that will remove the bear. And underneath the bear is this pool of brown blood, or green blood, I guess. I don't know why it's that color, but this essentially is a part of the interface where dead enemies and opponents can be assigned different blood splatters. So this kind of indicates where that bear fell down, where he basically perished. So that's that. And she has her turn. So what I'm going to do is open her character sheet up, and she has a minor cure wounds spell, so I might just heal herself, or if anyone's injured. There's nobody injured, so I think she's gonna move 5 feet and kind of kneel down and check the bear and make sure it is dead. It's gonna say a little prayer, and that's essentially her turn. So she's kind of blessing the occasion that they survived, and also for the taking of a life. So she's being devoted. And now I'm going to go down to this last character here. He's going to also go up to the bear and retrieve his blade, and he's going to clean off the edge of it, and he's going to kind of say, wow, that could have turned out much worse. He looks at the dwarven cleric, and he's like, thank you for coming to my aid. You're very timely. And we got to check this place out, and maybe we can stay here for the evening, but I'm going to need help hauling this corpse out of here. There's no way I'm going to be sleeping in here with a dead bear. The whole premise of this was that the bear actually had come in to attack them because of this bear skin rug. Essentially, this cabin was owned by another previous owner, and they had hunted for bears in the past, and the bear had finally caught up. I mean, this is like 2 years in the making, and unfortunately, the player characters had just arrived, and when they got there, the bear had already infiltrated the cabin, was looking for the perpetrators that had killed his mate. And then he kind of just came out of, as soon as they opened the door, he just launched at them and started attacking because the door was open when they got there. So they thought that was mysterious. So that basically is how the kind of the turns would work out. And then they're going to take a short rest. So if I go to menu and I'm going to click on this eyeball, this lock here, and go to rest and short rest. So I just did a short rest. And that's gonna, if anyone wanted to do like a natural healing, or if they wanted to maybe clean themselves up, or do whatever. And during that short rest, we'll say that the halfling said, "Hey, I found this backpack over here that's got some loot." So I just made up a little parcel. This took me a couple minutes to make it, and I did this right before the adventure, we'll say. It's got some coins, and then it's got like a little bit of equipment, like a bow, potion of healing, some food. There's a fine set of leather and leatherworking tools. So whoever owned this cabin was a good leather worker, and he was working on a suit of armor that's almost finished. And then there's a herbalism kit, a dagger, some arrows, that kind of thing. So this is just kind of some minor loot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the party sheet, which is basically another really nice feature in Fantasy Grounds. Most rule sets support this. So this is like a summary of all the players for the Game Master. It has their armor class and their perception listed here. It'll let you know if they have dark vision or any specific senses. There's also their ability scores are across here. And what's really neat is you can do kind of like a group roll if you need to. So what I'm going to do is click on this eyeball, because that's going to hide the results. And down below, I'm going to roll a perception for the entire group. And the DC challenge rating, or the difficulty challenge rating, is a 12. So if I click on this roll button, it's going to roll against that number for everyone in the party that's on the party sheet. This doesn't include NPCs or pets or anything like that. It's just the party members. So once I click on this, it should roll all of the different rolls against their wisdom checks and their abilities and such. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And with this, it will let me know who succeeded, who failed. So the cleric and the warlock, they succeeded, but the fighter and the rogue, they didn't notice anything. So I would narrate that and say, well, while you guys are resting, you happen to look over, and on the table is like a journal that describes the last days of whoever built this cabin or whoever lived here last. So it was dated like a few months ago. There might be some clues in there. And then maybe these two are kind of investigating it and checking it out. So they might be over here taking a look at what's on the table. And also he's looking at the loot. So, but it would be the, who else is in here? The cleric. So those two are over here at the table checking out this thing, and then the rogue and the dwarven fighter are probably going to drag that bear out of there. So that's kind of their activities for the next couple hours, and they're kind of taking it easy, cleaning up their gear. Maybe they're considering staying here for the shelter. So we'll see if that happens. But again, I'm going to pop up this loot, and I'll bring up the party sheet. And then if I go to the last tab here, I can award the players some sort of experience points. So the encounter, if I made one, let me go to, here's NPCs, and then do you have an encounter thing that you could set up ahead of time? So barely survived. Okay, so this is the bear. And what I'm going to do is take that bear. This is the encounter itself that was attached to this map. I'm going to left click and drag this over into the encounters area. So drag and drop. So the bear is worth 200 experience. Now there may be more or less of the combatants on the map, but in this case it was just the one bear. So if I click on the award button, that's going to automatically divide the experience points amongst the people who are on the party sheet. So if I click on that award button, it's basically going to give everyone 50 XP. And then when it comes to the loot, if I go to the inventory tab and I drag that parcel that I had earlier that had all the loot and the treasure in it, that will basically give me the ability to award the content and the coins to the player. So if I left click and drag this up to the party sheet, that's going to put everything in this queue. And right now it's set to sell anything that has a value at 50%. We can work on that later, but for now all the coins are right here. But if you get to civilization, or you get to a point where you can do some trading, you can decide what the going rate is depending on the local economy or role playing or however you want to do it. So one thing I did notice is there's a potion of healing. So the dwarven cleric is probably going to want to keep that. So she lays claim to that. And I don't know if anyone wants anything else, but she's going to also take the herbalism kit. So she laid claim to those two items. So when we go to sell this, those two items won't move. They won't sell. And at some point when we have a break in the game, or if we do a store day or some sort of interaction, I can have that player access this sheet as long as I have the option open in the options area. So in this case, there are a couple options. So I wanted to first say that if you want all of your desktop windows to stay where they're at when you leave, you want to turn on restore windows on start. So that will help you kind of recollect everything. It'll pop everything back up where you had it. So if you leave everything as it is, you come back, it'll stay exactly like this, or pretty close. And then also, we already have the dice tower turned on, so that's not always on as an option. But the actual things that I want to make sure are on is show characters to players, which is on, and then show inventory to players, which is on. These are normally off by default. So I just wanted to show you a couple things in the settings. So now what happens is if a player has their character sheet open, and let's just say that this dwarven cleric, I give her the opportunity to interface with that. So she can go to her inventory tab and then take these two entries and drag and drop them from the loot onto her own record. So if I take the herbalism kit, drag and drop it, that's going to add it to her inventory and take it away from the loot. So this way it doesn't get sold and anyone can grab it, but she's already laid claim to it. And if they can't get to it right away, you can always put their name in here and that kind of assigns it. Doesn't prevent anyone else from taking it, but at least has a marker on it. And now that's what's left over. Now, anything here that has at least a value of some sort that can be traded or sold, that will be taken out of this queue and converted to coins. So we're going to say that after this adventure, they make it back to a town or civilization. They're able to haggle upward, so they're going to get 60% of value instead of 50. So whatever these things are worth, they are going to get 60%. So I'm going to go ahead and sell the items, and some of these will not be able to be sold because it's less than 1 unit. So when you go to your arrows, you look at this, it costs 4 or 1 gold. So what you have to do there, since it can't be divided automatically into silver, I'm just going to change this value to 10 silver. So whatever the denomination is, 10 SP. So that's a little bit more divisible. And I'll go ahead and lock this back up. And now when I try to sell it, it should, so it actually sold it for 6. And then that can be divided up somewhat between the 4 of them. And now with the leftover coins that are over here, now I can hit the down arrow and that will distribute the coins amongst the group evenly or somewhat evenly. So go ahead and hit distribute coins, and anything that's left over, you have to manually convert that. So instead of 3 gold, I'll switch this over to 31 gold or 31 silver, and I'm going to manually delete that, and I'll just leave the copper. I'm not too worried about it. And now I'll divide the silver up. So now we have 3 silver and 3 copper left over. So if I wanted to, I can convert these 3 to 33 coppers and then delete the silver there and go ahead and hit the down arrow. And now we only have 1 copper piece that we cannot split evenly. So everybody's got their share of the coins and whatever they had else on them, and it records it onto the character sheet. So that's kind of how you manage their inventory. And when their inventory changes a lot and you've done a lot of sells, buy, selling, and trading, you can hit this refresh, and that will rebuild the character inventory so that you have the ability to see what's going on here. And when you share this sheet with the group, I don't remember if it shares this bottom half, but the players will be able to see the top half at least. And then if you share the order tab, this is where you would set up the marching order or the grouping of the players. So normally the Bralem would be up here up front. So this thing is pointing north or up, and we'd put the cleric probably right behind him, and the wizard, or in this case, I think it's a warlock, right there, and then the rogue back there. So this is a way to keep track of where they are, and if you're going a different direction or you're going to start off in a certain formation, you can change this if you want. So maybe you want more of a grouping. So we might take that and put these individuals here and bring this guy up here, maybe make it like that. But you can rotate it too. So it doesn't have to always face north. So now it's facing to the left. So what this does is, let's just say I wanted to regroup and everyone's going to head outside. So I'll take this little link here, drag and drop it onto the map, and that puts them on there in that order. So that's how you add the party as a grouping, and that way you don't have to drag them individually. You can do it all in one shot. So this is just a kind of a minor tool, not really that big of a deal, but it does help when you want to change maps and that sort of thing. So it's like your starting location, so to speak, or your starting formation, or marching order. This watch order doesn't do a whole lot, but what I normally do is I say that Bralem takes first watch, the cleric will take second watch, the warlock will take third watch, and then the rogue is usually the last one. He'll sleep right away, and then he'll be the last one to wake up, and he'll start to fire and get breakfast going or whatever. So that's kind of just a way to differentiate like who was sleeping when. So if you have an encounter in the middle of the night, you can probably roll a 1d4 and determine at what time of the night the encounter occurs and who was awake at that time. So you can do stuff like that. It's not really mechanical, but it does help keep track of things. So this is the party sheet. So the party sheet, the combat tracker, and the chat window are your main tools for Fantasy Grounds. The rest of this stuff, like the map, is optional. Honestly, you don't have to use the map. You can do everything on the combat tracker pretty much. If you don't have a map, you can always just use an image. So if I'm going to close this, maybe you guys are outside, right? So I can take this link, drop the players on here, and use this as my map. Even though it's really not a map, I could technically use this to illustrate what's going on and not have to necessarily have a tactical battle map. So this is helpful when you don't have a map, but you still want to see the range and all that sort of thing. Or if you wanted to, you can use that bear picture, the grizzly bear, and use that. So maybe this is just a representation that you're going to use, and you can take these characters and place them on this image and then rearrange them just kind of like in a line here. So you just have a space to work with. And then you just attack from here, and you'd put the bear on here, of course. So if I go back to that encounter that I made for this example, let's go to encounters. So I might link the encounter to this image so when the time comes, I can get to it quicker. I don't have to go through the whole interface. So I can pop this up, and what I'll do is take this bear and place it on the image ahead of time and then position it. So maybe it's right here, and then go ahead and close this. So when I'm ready to run this and the players are on this image, all I have to do is click on the encounter, click on add to tracker, and that adds the token on there. He's not visible yet, but he will be when the time comes. And when it's time to fight, I'll just make sure his token is visible, and I'll go to menu and go to initiative, and I can roll for everybody since I don't have any players. So I cleared all the initiatives from before, and now I'm going to go to menu, go to initiative, and I'm going to roll all initiatives. So now at the top of this order, round 1 is the fighter. So I would give him the option of what he wanted to do for the next round. So there's different ways you can do this. Fantasy Grounds, it offers a lot of power, a lot of options, and it does have pre-built stuff, but it also is flexible enough to let you add in your own. Just to know that when you first start off, you probably want an adventure just to look at it, to see how it's constructed, look at the formatting, kind of get used to where all the stuff is, and do all that stuff first, and then kind of get used to the flow of combat. Managing characters and building characters are probably your biggest challenge in the beginning, because characters, it's helpful if they're built correctly and thoroughly. So this way it doesn't hold you up and you got to fix stuff, and it's okay to do that occasionally, but not every time. So you're going to have to get used to building characters, managing characters, leveling them up. That's probably one of your first big challenges, and then you can start tackling adding your own maps and start customizing things more. I think that's a better path than trying to do everything at once. I know we've had a few people come in and says, I want to add sound to Fantasy Grounds. Well, you can do that sort of with Sirenscape and with the built-in implementation, but it's a process. And if you don't know where to look and you don't know how to use the platform very well, you don't know where things are at, you don't know how it operates, this really isn't going to be helpful. It's going to add another level of frustration potentially. So you got to be kind of do this in steps, like get used to one thing and then move on to the next. And that's regardless of the rule set or how you play. The other thing is limiting the amount of content you have. It's like in the beginning, I think when I first started, I'd get these gigantic maps and hundreds of tokens and like 50 different modules, and you don't really honestly need all that. You just need like 1 or 2 core rule books and an adventure. Once you get more comfortable, start adding some assets, adding more maps, designing your own maps, and pretty soon you'll find yourself probably spending more time messing around with building stuff than anything else, because it is time consuming. I'm not going to lie. Some of the processes do take time, and that's something you're going to have to either be willing to put in the effort or just buy a pre-made adventure that's done most of the work for you. The maps are already done. The line of sight's already done. You already got tokens in most cases, so you don't have to do a bunch of work if you don't want to. If you want to bring the immersion and you really want it to be custom, you do a lot of homebrew, then it's going to take some time to get used to how to enter a text, how to add images, how to put the line of sight on those, how to incorporate sound into your rig, all those sorts of things. So just try not to take all that at once. There's just no way to do it all in one day. It even takes me a while. Like if I started a whole new campaign, even with the knowledge and experience I've had, it still takes a while to set that up. Probably takes me about an hour and a half to kind of set up for the first time, because that's looking at the maps, kind of skimming through what we're going to be working on, organizing all my windows ahead of time so they don't pop up in the middle every time I open them, and then kind of getting familiar with the content. And then it might take me another like 15-20 minutes to set up the audio part for the first time, because I have to create a link and I have to create an invite. And then it might take maybe an hour for me to build 4 characters at the most, maybe less. depending on how complex they are. So if you have to start from scratch, I would start with the characters first. If you want to provide pre-gens and you don't want to spend 2 hours, with each person working on characters, I would recommend building 4 first so that you're familiar with them, and that when the players use them, you kind of understand what's going on with them. Because sometimes you can be blinded by some of unfamiliar features or customization on the characters that you're not aware of. So I would recommend using pre-gens at least for that first time, so that people get used to the clicking on things and dragging things, and getting used to the different processes and motions. So that's really what I wanted to show mostly, is just kind of some of the functionality, some of the features. There are obviously a lot more features that can be added to Fantasy Grounds, but I do recommend that you kind of get your teeth into it first before you start adding extensions and animated tokens and animated maps and all that stuff, because there are limitations in Fantasy Grounds, and you won't quite understand that initially. So the only thing I can really say on that is just don't get maps that are too big dimensionally. Not necessarily the file size, but the actual dimensions. So you want to keep everything under 4K or 4000 by 4000 pixels. And you want to also try to keep the number of assets down, because it does take up a little bit of headroom if you've got like 20 different NPCs and characters on the combat tracker. And then maps that have a whole bunch of line of sight that are really huge, that have like lighting and everything else. So for example, this is the map. If I unlock this and go to the line of sight mode, that's pretty basic. But there are maps out there that have like a gazillion different, these little points here, these little dots, they add up, and after a while it impacts your performance. So you got to be careful with larger maps that have a very complex build on them, or if they're really huge, like Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Anything like that will potentially cause lag and performance issues, depending on your system, your network. But really, it kind of depends on the players too. Because if the players have really slow internet and slow machines, and they don't have video memory and that sort of thing, that can really slow things down. So you got to keep that in mind too. So there is a limitation, and you'll find that out soon enough when you try to load too many assets, or you try to load a huge map that probably can cover your whole wall if it was printed. You don't need anything like that in Fantasy Grounds normally. So you guys take care, enjoy your purchases, the sale that's going on. I think it's going on till the 4th, which is, I believe, Wednesday for most of us. And then also they usually have a sale like around Christmas time. So if you miss this one, you can wait till then. And take advantage of the Humble Bundles. If you're not aware of Humble Bundle, it's a website where they do donations to charities. Quite often you can pick up content that's kind of indirectly related to Fantasy Grounds, especially like Paizo products. And if you claim those on the website and you register on the Paizo online store, you can take advantage of the discounts between Fantasy Grounds and Paizo. They kind of have like a partnership. So you usually save between $5 to $15 depending on the value of the book. So if you own a lot of those in PDF format and you go to buy them in Fantasy Grounds, if you synchronize your account online through the website, there is a portal that you can go to that's going to help you with that. So if I go to the Fantasy Grounds website, and if you have your account and you're all signed in, you go to the store. If you're using Paizo or Steam, you want to synchronize the accounts. That's an important step if you're using Steam or if you're using Paizo products. And you also have to have a store account on the Paizo website. It doesn't count for hardback books, but any PDFs that you own or such, if you register those and then you synchronize your account. So in my case, I'll go to this Paizo account sync, and you can authorize the Fantasy Grounds website to interface with the Paizo website so you can get the discounts. So I'm going to retrieve all of my personal purchases from the Paizo store, and this shows all the different products that are linked. And then I can send all the purchases that I've done on the Fantasy Grounds store, and this will send that data to the store. So if I purchase something on the Fantasy Grounds store for Paizo, like for Pathfinder 2, then I'll also get the PDF basically for free. A lot of people ask why it's so expensive on Fantasy Grounds because for Paizo is because you're actually paying for the PDF and the Fantasy Grounds version. When you buy on just the Paizo store, you're just buying the PDF. And if you do the Humble Bundle, you get like 50 books for like less than $30. So it's definitely worth looking into. And then if you already own stuff, but you want to see any content that you discount price that you qualify for, I can look at my personal discounts, and anything on here will reflect if I already own the content, it will show me what I have available. So if I buy this stuff on the Fantasy Grounds store, I already have these at least in the PDF format, and I'll get that discount for it. And this is a difference between that and the bundle. So if you're going to buy a bundle, that's another story. So if you're going to be someone who wants to collect and you buy a bunch of products at once, there are bundles available, like a dice bundle. There's the pre-order 2024 5e rule set. If you like Pathfinder, there's the remaster bubble or the remaster bundle. I don't have any of the remaster books, so this isn't really going to help me. But right now there's a sale going on, and I do have some books, but this is going to bring my cost down quite a bit. So I'm probably saving, like in this case, about $18 here. So part of this might be because of the winter sale. And then what if you have like Pathfinder Legacy, like the before they switched over to the remastered, like I have a bunch of those. So it shows owned. I have all those. So these will show my discount in these areas. So this is like a $6-7 discount here, and that may include both the autumn sale and the discount from the Paizo store. So there's things like that. And if you want to know if a map is already included the line of sight, you go to the store and go to the Fantasy Grounds store, and you look at some of the adventures that may have maps like this Tales of the Red. It already has line of sight. That's what this LOS means. So anything with that means that it includes and it has maps in it or images that have been optimized for Fantasy Grounds, and the line of sight, the occluders, the walls, all that stuff's already been put in there. Now there's some content that doesn't have maps in it, or it might be really old. So it may not have line of sight built into it, but majority of the catalog has already been done for you. It's just when you add your own things or when you build your own maps, you'll have to add that stuff yourself. I like the dice kits. If you are someone who likes dice, the fancy colored dice, they have a bunch of sets. And you get most of the sets here if you buy the dice bundle. I think I own them all, so it's not gonna, it's not gonna help me much. I already own all of these. But this is a way that you can buy them. Now, if you want to buy them for your players, which they are separate, if you buy a set, the players aren't necessarily going to have that set. So if you want to buy it for your player, buy your stuff first and then do a different separate transaction. And if you know their user account on Fantasy Grounds, you can gift them these items. So next time they update Fantasy Grounds, it'll pull in the new dice, or they can buy their own. It's up to you guys how you want to do it. But there's quite a few dice now. They're starting to come around. The newer ones are these 2 monster sets, and then there is I think a dragon set. Yeah, dragons right here. So they're kind of getting more into specific dice for specific things. And then they have some more generic ones, like this one's hearts and skulls. They have some that have like these animation that comes off them. It's pretty cool. All right, folks, I don't think I need to sell you any more on this too much. The main thing is kind of do it in steps. Get used to the interface, learn how to build characters, learn how to manage them, and then start adding content slowly. And then work up to adding sound or adding extensions or adding all these extras that come after the fact. And if you need some maps or tokens, you don't want to necessarily spend the price that they have for the official products, you can go to the Forge, and this is community built DLC. So a lot of this is pretty reasonable. Most stuff on here is like $10 to $5 or less. There's token packs. There's adventures, there's all kinds of different things like types of assets that you might want to add to your game. There's extensions on here, but again, I recommend that you get used to the actual interface and the different nuances of Fantasy Grounds and learn the limitations, because you start piling the stuff on, it gets harder and harder to figure out what's the matter if you have issues or you get confused. So you guys take care. Happy holidays.